IVM.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host for the week, and I've got with me my co-podcasters, Varun and Ashwin. Hello guys, how are you doing? Varun?
All good, man. Ready to gloat?
Yeah, you are ready to gloat, but we're going to go to Ashwin first. Ashwin, I know you're shaking your head. How are you doing this week, man? All good with you?
I'm officially very bitter. I feel like I had the better team for our IPL Gloat XI. I feel like this was one of the, I don't know how to say this, less than correct official democratic processes where Varun just has more friends who have Twitter accounts than me, and that doesn't feel like the right reason to lose. So
okay, well, we're going to come to that. We're going to come to the Gloat XI, but I think what we've literally witnessed, we were recording a few minutes after one of the greatest races has ended. I mean, I think it's probably the greatest race I've seen since the Jo Jeeta Wahi Sikandar climax, where Sanju changes his gear and goes past Shekhar and then falls in the dust, and then Asrani, I think, says, "Maan gaye saab, Jo Jeeta Wahi Sikandar." But I mean, we've seen our listener poll come to an end, right? And I mean, it has been a race and a half. So we're going to come to that. But Varun, I'm going to first issue my public apology. I've done it on Twitter before. I'm going to do it on the podcast because I know you're very keen for me to say this. But I have to say, last week I got a bit too enthused, and you got in my head a little bit by saying all our teams are going to be the same. So I want to do a hatke Gloat 11. I totally missed the point on Pandya, and I should have had Dhoni. Shouldn't have had Pant. I don't think you guys should have had Russell, to be honest. He's only played 64 games. So greatest of all time should be greatest of all time. And I made a fantasy 11, which would have been good that day. And I apologize.
Are you apologizing and still digging at our teams in the process?
You just have to apologize.
Yeah, but it is true. I have apologized because I made a fantasy 11, not a greatest of all time 11. Right? But first of all, congratulations on winning the poll amongst us. Ashwin is still shaking his head. How does it feel, Varun, to have won a poll at last and actually understood what a greatest of all time 11 is?
It was great, man. Like I said, I think my team was the best. I have to give it to Ashwin. A lot of friends did say that they liked his team. And yeah, it was super fun, man. I think I didn't press 100% accelerate, but I should have and just crushed him completely.
Ashwin, I know you're still a little bit bitter about that, but I mean, 41% to 46%, not too bad considering the level of canvassing that we know went on, because there were groups in which I was on where he was asking my friends to vote for him, which was just awesome.
Yeah, I think the problem is I actually, to an extent, blame you a little bit more. That's the nature of these third-party independent candidates, right? Like if it was a two-party race, everybody would have had to vote for either me or Varun. 14% of the vote, it was 14, right, went to you.
Yeah, which is, I have to say, on reflection, was very kind of our listeners. So I have to say that that's very nice of them.
I mean, it was basically your family, right? Let's be honest.
But, and some friends, some hardcore friends.
Yeah, fair
Plus all the bots that I created.
Went to you. So, of course, there you go. So, but if even all I needed was 9 of that 14% to come to me and I would have won, right? So it's just, I mostly blame you. But no, it was honestly so much fun, right? Like to come up with greatest of all time 11. Well, I had so many discussions with different people, one of which was honestly a kind of a methodology question, which is because we pick players at their peak, but you could also define greatest of all time. Do you factor in longevity? Do you factor in consistency? Because your point you sort of made in passing about Russell was it's only 64 games, but at his peak, I think he's one of the greatest, right? And so how do you factor in longevity and consistency? Then are you picking a team that is the highest likelihood to win you games versus are you picking 11 slots of the greatest number 1, the greatest number 2? And that's where I went wrong with Raina, arguably, right? Like, to me, he's one of the greatest 11. He is certainly not the greatest number 5. He's never played at 5. So it's really interesting the more you slice it. And all that to say, it just triggered a lot of conversations.
And it's interesting. I also had a lot of discussions with my friends. A lot of them initially said they liked Ashwin's team better, right? And I liked his team too. Though what I realized when I dig deeper and had a discussion with friends was that I think, Ashwin, what you did is you picked the players not really taking into account what position they might play at, right? And so when you look at my team, I think I lost a lot of votes because I didn't have Gale. And I would say probably Gale and I could have easily slotted in Rohit for Pant, but that was kind of my emotional decision, right? That's what I wanted Pant in my team for that position. As I spoke to a lot of people, they really liked the fact that you picked these guys. But for me, where your team may have just lost a little bit is you had Rohit and Raina at 4 and 5, where a lot of people said these guys are all 1, 2, 3. And the second thing is you had Narayan, who is great, but when you look at where he should be batting, it's in a team where you've got Chris Lynn and nobody else opening. So I think that's where, I know you picked him purely for his bowling, but I think that's what it was. For me, it was just the Gale factor, I think, worked against me. But I think the rest of my team was so solid that the listeners just kind of stood up and voted with me.
Okay, can I just say that I think Ashwin actually went with the absolute correct spirit of greatest of all time. He actually understood what I failed to understand, which was you're picking the greatest of all time. And the job is made so hard because you only have a limit of 4, which is, in truth, it's a fantasy 11 limit. It's not a greatest of all time limit, right?
No, so
how can it be a greatest of all time with a restriction?
Yeah, so I mean, I think all of us may have interpreted it differently. I think my interpretation,
which is why it was such a great episode, right? Yeah. That's why it was just everyone was going at it. Yeah,
my interpretation was simple. Put an 11 together that's going to play a next game. That's exactly what I did, right? So I looked at it from that perspective.
So you changed your perspective from the test 11 that you picked where Ashwin was a test goat who was not playing the next game. Yeah, sorry, I had to get that in. I've been waiting all week.
You missed doing a poll about that, man. That's not my fault.
I didn't do it on purpose.
I will say, just for the record, as I was thinking about it a lot, I don't know if I would have changed my decision on Raina as it comes to greatest of all 11 or greatest of all time. Although I know that probably hurt me, I probably would have dropped Russell for Watson. I just spent more time looking at the numbers, and if you look at greatest of all time, like he's in the top of the. Now I picked Russell because of the impact and the number of games. But Watson was the toughest omission for me. Like
we didn't pick arguably the AB, man. We didn't pick AB. Right.
I think for me, if you have Warner and Gale, it's different and stuff. But just Watson for me was such a difficult omission.
Yeah. So I think the rule was crazy and it made it really awesome. But Varun, congratulations, man. So you have 1 minute to gloat and then we're going to move on to the listeners 11 because that has been something else, I have to say.
No, I don't need 1 minute. I've had the last 1 week on WhatsApp with these guys. I think I've driven them crazy. But I think both DJ and Ashwin have come out and said they would make changes to their team. I can happily say I wouldn't make a single change to that team.
Wow. Okay. Fine. Fair enough. Anyway, guys, so congratulations to Varun and good win there. We also then, because we got so much feedback from you guys, we also then put out a tweet saying, send in your teams and we'll put the first 4 we get up. I mean, we didn't think we'd actually get more than 4. In fact, what we ended up was we got 8. So I got up at 5 a.m. on Saturday for some odd reason. I don't know why. And I said, okay, we'll have 2 semifinals and the top 2 teams will qualify for that. Top 2 teams from each semifinal will qualify for the final. And we then had 4 finalists. And we had probably the greatest poll of all time, which I think till the last minute, it was like watching CSK versus Mumbai, where you had Shrikar versus Ajinkya. And oh my God, it was all guns blazing. And then Ajinkya just literally pulled out the accelerator. Varun is smiling away and he shot past Shrikar. It was 45% with an hour to go, right? Each of them had 45% of the vote. And incredible performance by Ajinkya. But let's talk about his team a little bit, guys. I know he's put out a video, which we'll put in the show notes, of explaining why he came up with this team. But let's talk about his team. So I don't know whether you guys have got it open at the moment, but Ajinkya's all-time 11 has Warner and Kohli opening, much like Varun's. He has Suresh Raina at 3, like Varun as well. AB de Villiers at 4. Wow, he's got those 4 players in the exact same order. No Gale, interestingly. Ashwin, that's why you and I didn't actually go very far. Actually, you went a lot further than I did.
I had 41, you had 14, and you issued a public apology. Don't lump us together, my friend.
Well, we're all on the podium together.
Okay.
There's only one guy on top of it.
Yeah, that's the beauty. Is you placed 3rd. That was pretty good, man.
Yeah, that is true. It doesn't matter out of how many. Plus, I've actually got a tweet just now which said somebody's joined Twitter literally to downvote my team and laugh at it. So this is what I talk about engagement. This is bringing listeners to the show, guys. Yeah. Anyway, let's carry on with.
We have the greatest fans because if somebody created a Twitter account just to download you, that is a different level.
That is a different level. I love it, man. It's really awesome. Anyway, moving on to number 5 in Ajinkya's team, it's MS Dhoni, captain, wicketkeeper, and now I agree, all-time IPL great. He has Hardik Pandya with 1,000 IPL runs. Ashwin, as I remember you pointing out last week. Ravindra Jadeja. Interesting selections for the 2 overseas bowlers. And I just want to talk through this very quickly. Rashid Khan, guys. Ashwin, any thoughts on Rashid making that team? Again, not a player that's played for very long in the IPL, right?
Yeah, so I think Varun actually said it really well. It's not so. There's no doubt Rashid Khan's numbers are good. I think what Varun articulated in our episode last week is the delta between in a 4 overseas limit world, the delta between him and the other Indian spinners is not that great. Whereas the delta between, call it Malinga, and the other Indian seamers was bigger. So, or the batsman tends to be bigger. So I think it's an interesting choice. There's no doubt Rashid has been fantastic. You could argue it's probably a little early to call him greatest of all time, but there's no doubt his economy rate, his wicket taking ability. He's an impact player. He changes the game for Hyderabad, but
with the bat as well, right?
I guess a little bit with the bat as well. But you're not picking him in the side for the bat. You're picking him in the side as a leg spinner who can bat a little bit. So I thought it was an interesting choice. Obviously, I didn't pick him in my side. He didn't even make my short list of kind of 15. But hard to overlook him. And obviously, the fans have voted, and Ajinkya's team won.
Varun, the next overseas bowler is not actually Malinga like we would have expected, but it's Dale Steyn, which now that I think back at it, man, like Steyn has been such a big part of the IPL. But he didn't figure in our conversation. So I find that interesting. Any thoughts on Steyn instead of Malinga or another overseas quick?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I would have also still picked Malinga if I was Ajinkya. I think what 3 of us suffered from maybe a little bit is recency bias. If you look at Dale Steyn's career, he's played 9 games in IPL since 2015, right? So in the last 5 years, 9 games. He didn't play for 2 years. So I think that's why we probably didn't think of him. No doubting he's a great bowler. I wouldn't have picked him in my greatest of all time, but Ajinkya got more votes than me, man.
Yeah, I mean, Ashwin, do you think we should put Varun's team up for vote against Ajinkya's team? Who do you think would win that?
I think we probably have a little bit of voter fatigue. So it's tough, actually. They're both good sides, but maybe we put all 3 up and see if I can ruin one of their lives the way you ruined mine. That would be great. Put mine versus Varun versus Ajinkya.
Piche se var. Very good. Okay, maybe we'll think about that. But the 2 bowlers to complete his 11 are Bhuvneshwar and Jasprit Bumrah. Kind of probably the 2 best Indian bowlers. And Bumrah's only been playing since 2013, actually. He's won the IPL 4 times. But he's only started in 2013, so he missed the first 5 IPLs, right? So interesting selection there. Let's literally, for 2 seconds, let's just talk about Srikar's team, right? Srikar also came up with a very interesting team. Again, Warner and Kohli opening. Reina was number 3. AB de Villiers number 4. So again, exactly
the same top 5.
Yeah, they've got the exact same top 5 with MS Dhoni. I like the Dwayne Bravo selection there at 5. At 6, sorry. Which again, when you think back at it, we make fun of Bravo because he's junk wickets and all of that. But that game that he turned with CSK versus Mumbai, the opener, that sticks in your mind with the bat. And he picks up loads of wickets with the ball, right? So interesting that neither of us actually picked either Bravo or Pollard, right? Because that's the other name that if you're talking about longevity in the IPL, Pollard's the other guy. Ravindra Jadeja makes Srikar's team. Harbhajan Singh makes Srikar's team. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. Amit Mishra, Ashwin, I know you had him and so did I. And Lasith Malinga. So interesting that nobody, Varun, and I emphasize nobody, out of the 11 teams that we had, 3 of ours and 8 listener teams, had the same team as we predicted. And that is the thing that stuck in my head to start with. We're not going to have the same team. And all the 11 teams we've spoken about, not a single one is identical, which is amazing, frankly.
It is, absolutely. And I think to me, it's just good for me because I strongly believe in this. If you think of Ashwin, my Ajinkya and Srikar's team, right, there must have been a total of 450 votes probably. Let's just roughly say 400 votes across these 4 teams. 300 plus votes went for teams without Gale in them. And that is the only point I was trying to make last week, that stats are not everything. Gale just dominate, but there have been so many interesting debates on Twitter that the fans have had. I agree with all of them. So I think it was good for me to see that I'm not the only one who thinks that way.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe recency bias works the other way as well, because you've seen Gale declining over the years. But if we had this conversation, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, Would it be a totally different conversation? Who knows? But guys, I think thank you so much for the engagement. It's been an awesome week for us to just be reading all those tweets and listening to your various thoughts, everybody defending their point of view, attacking the other person. But at the end of the day, it's a gentleman's game, right? As Shrikar said. And at the end of the day, we play hard, we play fair, but we shake hands or we bump fists or whatever else we do. And then we go home and maybe chill out and enjoy our lovely game. So, guys, I think that kind of wraps up the GOAT 11 episode. It's been really quite fun. But let's move on to some other topics now, guys. Cricket is on the comeback trail with the West Indies and England starting on the 8th of July. The test match is going to be played behind closed doors. I know England have gone into that bubble. The West Indies have been here practicing. Ashu, maybe I'm going to come to you first on this one. How excited are you to see Test cricket back on our screens, even though there won't be any crowds?
Yeah, definitely excited. Honestly, I've been watching or following soccer and football right since the English Premier League returned. And it's just, there's two things I would say quickly. One, great to see live sport back, man. We missed it. Golf has been back. I've been watching so much golf. Like I like golf and I play and I watch it, but I never watched this much. But it's on. Like just having live sports on in the background is just great. So I'm super happy for that. I think the interesting thing to see with cricket is going to be how they manage crowd noise and stuff too, right? Like I've been blown away. I don't know if either of you has watched any of the live soccer, but there's no crowds, but it's all digitally recreated crowd noise. And so yeah, I mean, and so much so that when there's a pass in front of goal and the home team just misses, the crowd goes like, oh, and it's incredible. I haven't spent the time reading, but I don't exactly understand all the technology, but it's really interesting to see them piping it in. And there are now ways you can watch online streams where you can mute the crowd noise and stuff. So super interesting to me. I'm just excited that there'll be live sports back. I hope there's some form of live cricket with India back soon, but no line of sight to that yet.
Varun, do you almost wish that they had crowd noise but no commentary in some cases?
I watch on mute in any case, man. But I'm so excited. I actually bought a 65-inch TV a few weeks ago just waiting for live cricket to start. So I really can't wait to watch. I was watching Jordan, The Last Dance on that 65-inch TV. So
is that just an entire wall in the house?
Pretty much. It covers the wall. The only limitation was the size of the wall. I would have gone for bigger, but the wall wasn't big enough.
Anyway, let's move on. I mean, the IPL may be back, so you may really enjoy the IPL on that huge, humongous TV wall that you've got. But the other thing that's happened recently is Pakistan is due to tour England, so they've been doing some COVID positive, negative. Varun, do you have anything to share with us on that?
Yeah, I think it's basically Mohammad Hafiz going to England to play the whole England team, right? Because 10 out of 11 players were tested positive except for Hafiz. So I got
no, but Hafiz was tested positive. He got a private test which was negative, and now he's been tested negative by the official thing. It's just that the drama is incredible.
I was just seen like memories of Gadar, right? Hafiz goes to England alone to take on the entire English cricket team. It was great. It was just great.
He's got the mooch and all the dadi and all also. It's too deadly, man. But I think the funniest thing that came out of that Twitter, and I know maybe like COVID is not a funny thing, is they basically said that it's pretty ironic that so many people have tested positive for COVID. Pakistani players find it quite hard to catch things that come off the bat usually. Which is pretty good. But Ashwin, anything to add to Pakistan?
It's been a little bit of a circus, right? So I think Afridi got it first, or at least was the first to kind of test positive, and then it kind of spread from there. So I don't know how 10 of the 11 players got it. That obviously means they were not following social distancing rules.
You think Afridi was practicing with them?
Afridi's making a comeback, right?
Again?
Isn't he coming back? Yeah, he's only 16, 17 years old. He's going to come back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know whether he's still playing. I've lost track, actually, to be totally honest with you. So that there's some real drama going on with the Pakistani COVID test. So the private stuff for Hafiz said he's negative, but the board-mandated test said that he was positive. Varun, anything interesting happening on social media? You can be a social media consultant. I know you're the one who sends us the Instagram videos and stuff of particularly Krunal Pandya doing Superman push-ups in the past week.
It was great. Both Hardik and Krunal did these push-ups. I don't know if it was in the same team or not.
Do you think that was because I picked them in my GOAT 11? Both.
Yeah, they were trying to justify and try to avoid your public apology. But actually, that's the majority I've been seeing on social media, man. Just Krunal and Hardik jumping around like spiders with ripped 6-8-pack abs, etc. That's all.
So nothing to report on that front. But Varun, you've also been speaking to some cricketers from the BBL, man. Do you want to tell us about that? Because that's going to be the back end of the show, right? So you spoke recently to Guy Walker.
Yeah, guys. So stay tuned with us, right? After this break, we are going to take you through a topic that was a little bit different. And so I had a chat with Guy Walker. He actually represented Australia in the under-19 cricket team at the World Cup in Dubai. He's played for the Melbourne Renegades in BBL. He's also played Australian Football League. And at the age of 24, he had an injury that kind of ended his career. And so we spoke a little bit about that. It was interesting because it was a very different take. It's something that we haven't discussed before on this show. He's now working a lot on mental health for sportsmen. We spoke about Glenn Maxwell. And so it's a great episode, guys. Do listen to the second half of this show. And of course, when we ended, I had to ask him if he had been around Kohli sledging, because I think that's just something we do. And he did have a story there as well.
So there you have it, guys. Join us for the interview with Guy Walker straight after this break, and we will see you then.
Hey guys, Ajinkya this side. Extremely happy to have won this competition. I feel like I won the IPL as it went right down to the wire with Shrikar. Congrats to him, Karthik and Sudeep for making it to the finals. And thank you to all the voters for voting my team. I've been following Edges and Sledges for quite some time along with my friends Anurag and Ishwari. And this is our favorite podcast. It relates us with our daily discussions on cricket. And we love the name One Tip, One Hand. I mean, after all, we all started our cricket with one tip, one hand, right? Thank you.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Like we've had during this lockdown in the last couple of months, we have another exciting guest for you today. We'd like to welcome Guy Walker. Welcome, Guy, to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Guy, we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about all things cricket, all things sport. For our listeners, Guy actually represented Australia at the Under-19 Cricket World Cup in Dubai. He's been associated with the Melbourne Renegades. He's played football. So, Guy, I'm going to jump in straight and ask you, like we ask most guests on this show, tell us how your interest or love for cricket started and walk us through a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey for me. I was born in England. My dad was Australian, but he played county cricket for Nottinghamshire. So straight away, I'd picked up a bat and ball from a pretty young age, and then we went over to Malaysia to where he coached the Malaysian national team in cricket, and then ended up coming to Victoria where he also coached the Victorian girls cricket side. So pretty much cricket was always in my blood, and from a very young age, I sort of picked up a cricket bat, and that was pretty much my journey, mate. And then straight away through the pathways and in Australia over here, and lucky to represent my country at a World Cup and play a little bit of professional cricket. So yeah, it was quite an interesting journey, and cricket was always sort of always in my life from a very young age.
Awesome. And what was it like? Did you also live in Malaysia at that time, and did you play over there? Because for our listeners, I mentioned it 2 episodes ago as well. I'm in Singapore. Cricket is popular here. It's not very popular, though. The average person that you meet is not going to be talking about cricket. So I know Malaysia is similar. What was it like growing up there, or trying to play cricket, or watch your dad coach people there? How was it? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I've got vivid memories, but because I was so young, we ended up moving over there when I was about 6 years old when he coached the Malaysian team. So we were only there for about a year and a half, but it's funny that you can have some memories of different things. And I can remember some of the players playing cricket there, and they were trying to get into the World Cup then as well. So I can vividly remember some things of different games, and actually some of the Malaysian international cricketers live in Australia now. So I still catch up with them to this day. So it's been, but yeah, like you said, it's quite. You don't meet heaps of people that love cricket, but it's still a love of cricket around them countries around Asia.
Absolutely, yeah. And tell us, when you got into cricket, what were you doing? Were you bowling? Were you batting? I mean, I read a little bit about you. It says you're a good all-rounder. Talk us through kind of what is it that you wanted to become, and not just in cricket, with other sports as well. Because I was reading you've played a lot of sports as a kid. Yeah,
I think I imagine I'm like most kids. I sort of grew up. I thought I was going to be a wicketkeeper, a batsman, a bowler, a soccer player, an AFL player. Because like most of your listeners, I wouldn't imagine that they would know a hell of a lot about Australian rules football. So in Australia, you kind of play either cricket, football, basketball, or soccer. So yeah, I was sort of playing winter, I'd play AFL, summer I'd play cricket, and then whatever sport I could get my hands onto. That is literally, I'd play as many different sports as I possibly can. And in Australia, we're so lucky here because there's so many different clubs and there's just so many different leagues you can play in, and there's so much opportunity to just play sport. And I think that's the great thing about being a kid, is just wrapping yourself around as many sports as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's what anyone we talk to who's from Australia, that's similar feedback we get. Like it's all about just being outdoors and playing something, right? And so among those many sports, how did you choose cricket? Like how was it that what made you choose cricket as the thing that, I want to take this professional?
Yeah, I think for me as well is that I was starting to reach high levels of AFL and cricket, and at a certain age in Australia, you kind of have to make a decision. So luckily for me, it happened when I was quite young. I got into the Australian under-19 team when I was 17 years old. So I was travelling to New Zealand, India, Dubai and all that sort of stuff as a 17 and 18-year-old. And I got back as a 17-year-old and Cricket Victoria came to me and they said, hey, look, we want to offer you a contract. And yeah, so I sort of thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me. My dreams come true to become a professional cricketer at the age of 17. So it all happened really, really quickly for me. I went from playing for the Australian under-19s to literally 6 months later being contracted to Victoria and walking into the dressing room with the likes of Cameron White, David Hussey, Peter Siddle. And I was a 17-year-old walking into that and you're like, wow, like this is incredible.
Wow. And that is awesome, man. Like I have a smile on my face just listening to you, thinking about how as a 17-year-old you walked into the dressing room. Who were your idols growing up in cricket? When you watch cricket, who did you kind of say, I wish I could bowl to them, or I wish I could bat alongside them? Or
yeah, it's an interesting one. I think for me, probably as being a fast bowler, I can still remember Brett Lee charging in and bowling absolute thunderbolts all the time, and he was great to watch, wasn't he? Like you watched him come in and bowl outswingers at 150k an hour. Like you're like, if you can start bowling like that, that would be unbelievable. So I think he was a big sort of idol of mine as a cricketer when I was sort of growing up. But I was lucky enough, I guess, to having my dad as a professional cricketer in Nottingham. I sort of had him help me through sort of them younger years as a cricketer, and sort of I think one of the big things for him was just to do other sports and enjoy yourself, because cricket just takes up so much time and it's so mentally frustrating sometimes that your whole world can get consumed by it. So I found that trying to get away from and play other sports really, really did help me.
Awesome. And you mentioned Brett Lee. It's just so funny. I follow the Cricket Australia Instagram page, and just today morning, I saw Brett Lee bowling an in-swinging Yorker, and I watched it like 3 times, right? It was great. And he had the chainsaw celebration.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to that because I just saw that 30 minutes back. So that's interesting. Guy, talk us through a little bit about that Under-19 World Cup in Dubai. What would, conditions like? I personally don't remember too much about that, but it would be great if you could just talk us through your experience, what it was like for Australia, and overall conditions. Was it very different to playing at home?
Yeah, it was. It was completely different. And we're so lucky here in Australia, like the Indian under-19 team is as well, is that from literally 17 for a year and a half, like I was travelling to New Zealand to India, to Abu Dhabi, to Dubai, to Sri Lanka, all these different countries, and we play all these series against all these different teams. And it's a great experience because it sort of opened your eyes up to these now international cricketers, some of them. And yeah, I can remember I was injured a lot of that time. I had a lot of back stress fractures and I was really trying to get fit to come back for that World Cup. And we had a series a couple of months before it in India, and we just realised that India were the pinnacle, and that's where we were trying to get to. They had, I don't know what he's doing now, but we played against a player who was really good for India called Vijay Zoll. They had Sanju Samson, Sarfraz. They had some really, really good players. And then, so we sort of got to the World Cup and we nearly didn't make it, to be honest. We nearly didn't make it to the group stage. I remember I played the first game against Namibia and we beat them pretty convincingly, and they rested myself, Billy Stanlake. There was quite a few of us bowlers rested. And then we lost the next game to Afghanistan, and they were actually really good. And then we needed to win the third game against Bangladesh to actually get through the group stage. And luckily we did win that game to progress onto the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. So we ended up losing in the semi-finals to South Africa, and Kagiso Rabada took 6 for 20 against us. And he went from, people don't understand, but like bowlers can just end up bowling as at that young age. We played against him in September in India, and he was bowling 120. Like, we felt like we could really get a hold of him. So I can still remember the meeting the day before that game. We said if Kagiso Rabada plays, we want to take him down, because previously, a couple of months before, he was bowling that bad. We were like, we can get a hold of him. And then he came out and he just started bowling 30K quicker, nearly 150K, and absolutely skittled our top order. It was incredible within 3 months.
And how do you think somebody like, as a fast bowler, how do you get to that kind of, how do you jump 30K, right? From 120, which, like you said, you think, okay, this is comfortable. We can dominate this guy. And how do you think that happens as a fast bowler?
Yeah, I think age is a big thing. I think when you're growing as a 17, 18-year-old, that you're probably not as strong as you're going to be when you're a little bit older, and people have growth spurts. People just learn to sort of confine their action. And literally, I can still remember it vividly, him running in India. We're playing in Visakhapatnam Stadium, and we were taking him down. Our batters were taking him down all the time. He played, I think, 2 or 3 games against us, and our batters in the meeting before the World Cup semi-final said, yeah, we're going to get after him. Let's take him down straight away. And I remember at the first bowl he bowled, we all looked around at each other like in shock. And we're like, is this the same bowler that we played 3 months ago who was bowling backwards? And then, he just started bowling. I can remember I faced him that game and he bowled a bouncer to me second ball, and it whizzed past my face at 149 kilometres an hour. And I was just like, what is going on here? How is he? I've never seen that before. A bowler go from bowling 120 to 140, 145 within a couple of months. It was ridiculous.
And is that the fastest you faced as in your career so far, till then?
Probably not. I can remember we were playing a game against New South Wales and Dougie Bollinger came in, and he's always someone that never sort of takes a step back, Dougie. And I remember he came in and probably bowled the fastest spell of my career that I ever faced. And like, we were lucky enough, like, we got to face, I faced like a lot of Ryan Harris, Paddy Cummins and that sort of stuff when we were a little bit younger and living at the academy. But that spell from Dougie Bollinger, he literally tried to kill me that day.
Oh, wow. I can't even imagine that. Yeah, we've seen him bowl for CSK and we followed him a lot as well. It's been fun. And so pivoting a little bit into T20, so you've been part of the Big Bash as well, right? When did you start that, and what age was that after the Under-19 World Cup? When did you join the Big Bash? What was that experience like? Of it, at least even just being in the dressing room with some of big names.
Yeah, I think my first experience of it was quite a different one. I think when I was 17 and I got my Victorian contract, the Melbourne Stars came and they offered me a rookie contract as well. So I was 17, I just got my Victorian contract, I was on the Stars list, but obviously I couldn't play any games just because we were travelling so much with the under-19s. But when I was back in Australia, my first experience of the Melbourne Stars was quite incredible. Like, we had a massive businessman that sort of was a CEO of and ran and the president of the Melbourne Stars, and everything was lavish. Everything was with Shane Warne and everything was at Crown Casino, and Kevin Peterson was there, and it was honestly massive. Like, for a 17-year-old to sort of walk into that environment was a massive change and a massive look into what almost like stardom looked like with all these massive name players. And then, sort of a couple of years later, I was always injured throughout my career. I always had back stress fractures and that kind of thing. And I finished up with the Stars a couple of years later, and I think I was 19 and just coming back from a stress fracture. And I remember David Saker was in the nets. He was a Victorian coach at the time, and I was coming back from injury, and I bowled a session before the Big Bash teams had to be finalised and the deadlines were there. And he was watching me in the nets, and he said to me, he goes, "That's the quickest I've ever seen a junior bowl." And he offered me, literally pretty much on the spot, offered me the last spot on the Melbourne Renegades list. And that's how I sort of was with the Melbourne Renegades, to join the likes of Chris Gale and Dwayne Bravo and Cameron White, Aaron Finch. Like, it was literally, that's how it happened.
Wow.
Pretty incredible.
I didn't know that. That's a great story, right? For all our listeners, that's an interesting story. And so, Guy, you touched upon injuries a little bit, and let's spend a little bit of time talking about that, right? Because I know you're doing a lot of work what was it like to kind of having to keep coming back from injuries? And today, I believe you've retired from the game, right? So talk through a little bit about what. Well, I guess I have so many questions, right? One is, if you were a younger athlete, and could you have prepared for the situation better? Mainly just so that our young listeners can try to understand, right? If there's something different fast bowlers could have done. Or even if not, what is it like for you who's chosen this career of sports and then had to now deal with injuries, right?
Yeah, it is. I could speak about it all day, to be honest. Like, I think one thing that really does come back to me is that any young listeners listening, that when I was 17, 18 years old, and some of the older players, like even I remember John Hastings told me, and all the fast bowlers, even James Pattinson was going through a lot of injuries, and he said things can happen really quickly with cricket and with sport. And I sort of always took that as like, this career will go for 15 years. I'm contracted as a 17-year-old. I'm playing Big Bash as a 17-year-old. Like, this will go forever. But I never, ever had one problem with my shoulder ever. And that, my first and only Big Bash game, I didn't know at the time, but I tore the labrum in my shoulder throwing, because we were playing at the Gabba, which is in Brisbane, and the square boundaries are massive. And I threw a ball in and I felt something go. And then literally probably a couple of months later, I required a major reconstruction. And from then, as a 20-year-old, I was literally on cloud nine playing Big Bash. In the team I was literally standing next to Chris Gale, Dwayne Bravo, Aaron Finch, Matty Wade, Cameron White. And I'm 20 years old. I've just got back from injury, playing in front of 40,000 people at the Gabba. And then I've just gone. That was my last proper game I ever played in my life. And that was 5 years ago now. And then since then, I had shoulder surgery after shoulder surgery after shoulder surgery. And then I've ended up playing. I got a contract to play AFL for Melbourne, one of the big teams here, and just got almost like a tackle. I got tackled and ended up with a severe nerve injury that not only I had to retire from sport, but I actually had to adapt to live life again properly, because I actually couldn't use my shoulder to do anything. So when going back to your question about could I prepared better, it was almost one of them things that if you're a youngster, make sure that you do everything that you possibly can to make sure that your body is right, but also know that it can happen, it can change very quickly, and your career can literally flash in front of you. And that's what happened to me. Within the space of a year, I had 2 shoulder reconstructions and I was nearly out of a contract.
Wow. Yeah, it's a story that I'm really glad you spoke about that, guy, because when you talk to people, you always talk about people who's had a 15-year career, like you mentioned, right? Yeah. And nobody really talks about the guys who put in that effort, and it's just uncontrollable. Like you said, it could happen overnight. It could happen with one fielding, one ball, right? One ball you're trying to throw back in. Just help us understand a little bit. So you said you got injured and then you played AFL. So your shoulder recovered and then it happened and then you got a nerve injury. Is that right? So you, the nature of the sports was such that the shoulder injury didn't allow you to play cricket, but was it allowing you to play another sport?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. So what happened was with the shoulder reconstruction, that it's funny, the way it works is that when you do get a shoulder reconstruction, it's actually easier to bowl than it is to throw. So if you watch Jai Richardson, who plays for Australia now, he's had a shoulder reconstruction, and what he does from the boundary is he bowls it in. He tries not to throw it. So it ended up being that my shoulder was that bad that I probably couldn't throw again, but it was good enough to be tackled and to try and play AFL. Obviously, the teams that I went and played for, the team that I went and played for had their concerns about it, but it was a totally freak accident. It wasn't anything to do with my shoulder reconstruction. I literally just got tackled, and what happened was that a nerve in my neck nearly severed from my neck, and it was hanging on by a thread. And what happens, a long story short, is that what happens with our bodies is that our brain sends messages down to the nerves into your muscles to get them going. And pretty much they all stop. So I went from having a normal shoulder to almost having a ball of muscle lost in my shoulder blade, my neck. I had no muscle. I lost like 5 kilos of muscle in there. Wow. So yeah, and it happened like that. Crazy.
Wow. That's tough. And so how did you take that, right? Like when you had to retire, it must have been a tough decision. What did you go through? I'm sure family and friends were there for you at that point as you to help you through that decision. But how did you go through that?
Yeah, it was a really tough one. I walked it was a couple of months after it happened, and I was trying to train because I was always injured. I just wanted to keep training, so I probably should have made the decision earlier. But I can still remember going into the neurologist's office, and she said to me, I walked in and I was thinking that she was going to say, have a couple of weeks off and you'll be right. But I walked in there and I could tell by her eyes straight away that it wasn't good news. And she turned around to me, she said, this is going to be hard news to take, but not only can you never play again, you need to do some serious rehab to try and live a normal life again. And that was when it sort of flicked for me and I went, okay, wow, this is pretty serious. And I have had great support, but I think until you actually can't know what it's like to live in pain constantly, it is a really, really hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that's been like, right? It's been tough. And so tell us, so what are you doing today? I know you're working with a lot of different, I think it's called Tackle for, sorry, what is it called again? Yeah.
It's a mental health program called Tackle Your Feelings. So I've been doing a bit of work with that, which is almost aiming to give coaches the tools to have enough in their sort of armory to deal with mental health issues with their players. So they can actually spot and they might go, all right, well, look over there, Tim, he's struggling. He's not himself at the moment. And it's almost just having them tools to deal with it. So I've been doing that, which has been really good. And then I've started a podcast as well, speaking to athletes and speaking to players like, I don't know if you know them, but Sam Harper and Will Pukowski and John Hastings about their careers so far and they've had quite a few concussions and had to deal with a few real difficult things in their career so far. So that's been amazing. That's almost given me a new sense of purpose to try and speak to athletes about their careers and their challenges in sport. Like you said before, you always hear about the guy that's played 15 years or the Virat Kohlis or something, but I'm sure that there were some talented cricketers in India that have probably played 3 or 4 years, got injured, and now they're out of the system and they've struggled with that and adapting to life. So that's what I'm trying to uncover there.
Tell us a little bit about Tackle Your Feelings. What do you think will help take this kind of mental health discussion and issue to the next level, whether it's in Australia or globally? Are you guys backed by certain cricketing bodies? Who do you work with there? Do you have enough funding? Like what's going to help take this to the next level? Because I'm going to mention a name that obviously I'm sure everyone talks about, but Glenn Maxwell, right? He came out and spoke about it openly. And at that point, a lot of us, it was new to a lot of us, right? We hadn't heard about cricketers or sportsmen come out and actually say this, and I'm going to take a break. And I mean, it was fantastic when it happened because it's something that the world needed to hear. But how do more cricketers come out and say it, and how do organizations like Tackle Your Feelings take it to the next level?
Yeah, firstly, I think it's so brave what they've done. That's what I touched on before about Will Pukowski. He's a 23-year-old kid, and he's the first player to score a double ton after Ricky Ponting, Don Bradman, all these names, and he's a freak. Like he's going to play for Australia soon, and he got added to the Test squad, and then was about to make his Test debut, and then put his hand up and said, "Hey, look, I'm struggling mentally here." And I spoke to him about it the other day on my podcast, and he talks about everything that he's gone through with mental health, and even someone like Glenn Maxwell, he was my teammate for 5 years, and I could see some of the things that he was going through. But if you think about it, it does make sense, doesn't it, for cricketers to actually put their hand up and go, you know what, I'm struggling with life here. Because if you're travelling 9 or 10 months of the year, you're away from family, you're missing serious events, you're always away from that connection with people, you're under the spotlight all the time. Social media plays a big part of it now. So there's just so many factors that are coming into all of these players that I think it's just going to be natural that when a few brave players like Glenn and Will have put their hand up to go, you know what, mental injuries are similar to physical injuries as well. Like we do need to take time off for them to try and work on ourselves. So I think it's really good now that it's starting to come as a bit more into society, and it's in society as well. Like I'm sure that so many people that we both know are struggling mentally with their life as well. So it helps when a good role model like Will or Glenn puts their hand up and go, hey, you know what, I'm struggling. And it helps society because then they go, look at these cricketers, they're on couple of $1 million a year, they've got the life, but they're actually struggling as well. So it's okay for us to struggle. So that's been the great thing about working with Tackle Your Feelings is that we're funded by Zurich Foundation, which is a massive they're a massive life insurance firm. So they've helped us fund this program, which has been amazing. And I think we need to start having more conversations around it and make it a normal to actually say to each other, for you to go up to your friend and say, hey, look, how are you going? And then say, well, look, I am actually struggling at the moment, and then being able to take that conversation somewhere.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that it's a great initiative. And so it's Australia based right now, or is it a global initiative?
Yeah, so it's Australian based, but they've actually started one in Ireland as well, with these big meaty rugby union players that are actually putting their hands up and saying, hey, look, I'm struggling here. And it's just obviously look at like that macho man, and they're like massive boys, and they're actually saying, hey, look, I'm actually struggling here. So it's worked in Ireland and Australia now. Awesome.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
All our listeners take note of that, right? It's a different topic we've touched on today. We typically, don't go into this particular topic, but Guy, thank you for reaching out and yeah, it's been great to hear your story. I do want to ask you on a lighter note, which is your kind of favorite form of the game today? Test match, ODI, or T20 cricket?
Yeah, it is a difficult one, because I think if it's a good test match series, like hopefully India get to come out to Australia this summer, and there's nothing better than watching. And that's the thing that I really do respect Virat Kohli with, is that he isn't someone that gets put off by the Australian team putting their chest up. He goes just as hard, and I love it. I think to see a player go back at the Aussies is awesome. So I think Test cricket is the pinnacle. But yeah, I do love watching T20s and how skillful it is now. And I think ODIs for me now, I think that 10 to 40 over period, I think it's just getting same old at the moment. You knock 4 or 5 and over around, and who really wants to see that? I think that's why the viewers are starting to lose interest in it.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of friends I talk to as well, they're like, once in 4 years we enjoy the World Cup, but otherwise ODI cricket is slowly kind of dwindling in interest. But you mentioned Virat Kohli, right? Yeah, it's been no podcast of ours can go without bringing him up at least once, right?
Of course.
Yeah, he's been, I think he grew up watching cricket in the 90s, like a lot of us, where Australia were the best team in the world, and of course they dominated, right? Not just with the bat and ball, but even with their words on the field, etc. So it just feels like Virat Kohli's come from a generation that just wants to let his bat do the talking, but also wants to kind of get up in their face and say that, hey guys, like, we are also willing to do this, right? And I've worked with Australians before. They actually say they really respect him for doing that, exactly like you mentioned.
Yeah. I like a quick story. I was, for 2 years in a row, I was 13th man for the Boxing Day Test, to be around the group and be around the Boxing Day Test. And one year the Australians played against India, and I can remember running out David Warner a drink, and I could hear, I was standing next to Virat Kohli, and he was literally just kept yelling at Dave Warner and like not sledging him badly, but just was into him and was just not backing down from the contest. And that was when I was like, geez, this bloke is like full on. Like, not only is he a great cricketer, he lets his actions and he lets his words do the talking as well. Like, that's why I think even though in Australia, I think people will say, oh, no, I don't like Virat Kohli, whatever, but everyone respects him, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the feedback I've gotten from every Australian I've spoken to. You remember what he said, though, or you couldn't hear that? From what I remember, it wasn't PG. So he was going, but they were going back at each other. Like, I was in the middle of it trying to give David a drink, and you've got 5 meters away from each other. They are both literally nailing each other. It was incredible. Yeah. Awesome. And then just last question, do you watch the IPL as well?
Yeah, I do. A few of my mates now are starting to play a bit of IPL now, so I do enjoy it. It's hard with the time difference here, but it is a great competition and something that India has done so very, very well.
Yeah, awesome. And Guy, we'd hope that you'd probably come and join some form or something with the IPL, because that'll be great for a country like India to have somebody like you in their cricket kind of sphere and talking about issues that are probably not as popular as they are in Australia right now. So, Guy, thank you so much for joining the podcast, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Thanks.
There you have it, guys. That's the episode for the week. as always, write into us at One Tip One Hand on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Maybe even join those social media platforms if you want to interact with us. Send us an email at contact@onetiponehand.com. We'd love to hear from you guys what you think about the show and any ideas you have for the show. And yeah, we will be back next week. We've got a great interview lined up with a young player who is playing county cricket in England. He's also played some T20 Blast, and it's really, really a very interesting episode. So we will see you next week with that. And take care and stay safe.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and Intel. Really, really fun week, and I think that you guys should definitely check out some of the stuff we did. So we had Shifa Mehta, who is the host of the show Smile India, on the Paperback podcast. Really fun thing. On Edges and Sledges, our hosts had an episode just amongst themselves. No guests this time. Really fun show with lots of cool banter. I think you'll enjoy that quite a bit. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet had Shrishti Bell on. Shrishti is the head of Netflix in India, and I think you'll really enjoy that conversation as well. Also, do check out Uncle Please Sit. Joel and Tushar had Anuya Chatakar on. Anuya hosts the popular YouTube channel Books on Toast. And don't forget others of your old favorites like The Habit Coach, Football Should Ball, All Things Policy. All of them are doing a great job during this pandemic, and you should definitely check them out. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुड बॉल.
Presenting Football Should Ball, a show about three friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes 3, maybe even 5. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my 2 sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthika here.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Ayer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Should Ball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.